concerns really going to visit Danny's father. And when he goes to this dinner, chapter 7, the next day I met Danny's father. Chapter 7, what page is that? Chapter 7. Well, before you find out what page, let's look at the end of chapter 6. Reuben's father tells him the history of Danny's father's movement, which is really pretty interesting. It's all given to you in chapter 6, page 99. So he prepares him to meet Danny, and he talks about, for instance, on page, I think, 100 or 102, 101, 102, he talks about the Cossacks in the area where, in the 1600s, in the area where Danny's people come from, the massacres that occurred there. After these massacres at that time in central Poland, the Ukraine, those areas, many began to believe the Messiah was coming. So it's a messianic revival, something like Christianity was 1,600 years before. Remember, Reuben, there were Jews who believed in the Messiah. Believe also that just before the Messiah, there will be an era of great disaster. So he explains some of these false messiahs that have come since the scattering, what the Jews call the diaspora. Diaspora is a Greco-Roman word meaning dispersion. So he explains all of that in quite a good way. So as you're reading the novel, you're also learning. He speaks about this person, Shabbatai Tzvi, at the bottom, I think it's 102. And Shabbatai Tzvi is this sort of messianic personality that appeared among all the Jewish communities, and then it turned out that he was going to lead the Jews back to Palestine even then, and he failed. The Turkish Ottoman authorities in Istanbul arrested him, and he converted to Islam. They either gave him the choice of execution or Islam. He chose Islam, and that was a great disappointment to everybody. So out of all this, all these other movements in 1700s grew up. And then he tells about this Baal Shem Tov I told you about, the master of the good name. He was born about the year 1700 in Poland. His name was Israel. His parents were poor. He spent time with nature, with flowers. He read the Kabbalah. He lived in the Carpathian Mountains. So he tells you this whole thing about this Baal Shem Tov and how it developed, but after a while it became led by people called tzaddikim. In Hebrew, this means righteous ones. And then there were mitnagdim, it speaks about the opponents. Mitnaged means to be opposed to. The opponents of these Hasidim. So the Hasidim were led by righteous ones, who claimed to be righteous ones, also called Rebbes. And the other Jews, more Orthodox Jews, disapproved of this charismatic sort of thing. These Rebbe tzaddikim lived, he says, like Oriental monarchs here. It's in the middle of it's in 2 pages from the end of that chapter. Some of them were out and out frauds. That's Danny's Reuben's father telling him about these sects. And so that's how things got corrupted. So, in any event, they talk about Reb Sanders' son and how his son is a genius. So in chapter 7, then Danny finally goes to meet, Reuben finally goes to meet Danny's father. Danny's grandfather, here is in the middle of chapter 7, was a well-known Hasidic rabbi. He had 2 sons. His father was the second of the 2 sons, and then the older son, as it turns out, vanishes or is killed. And it's a pretty tragic situation from where he comes from. And things are pretty tough, and he describes the whole thing about their background. So this is quite interesting in terms of learning about this group. let's see. Well, as it goes on, and this dinner goes on here, this is a very long chapter.